Hey guys, so today I'm going to continue on the topic why Andrew Yang can win the whole thing. If you recall from yesterday about the big data analysis on Andrew Yang's polling number and what the polling number should actually be, you probably remember this. If you don't, you're welcome to go back and look up the analysis there and all the facts that support such analysis. So here I assume that X, so X is defined as the portion of people who do not go online very often, okay, who are more likely to take the polls, the regular polls. And 1 minus X is the percentage of people who go online very often and know Andrew Yang. Okay, so out of those who don't go online very often and who likely would take the polls, 4% of them, actually in some places 6%, support Andrew Yang. And for those who go online very often, 35% support Andrew Yang. And therefore we have a 19.5% polling, actual polling for Andrew Yang, if assuming X is 0.5. Okay, and now if X is different, the results could be different. It could be skewed one way or the other. But bottom line, I think Andrew Yang more realistically should be polling at around 20%. Now, another way to think about it is this: how many people know Andrew Yang and know about his policies? I actually did a survey, just talk to random people that I met on the street, and based on that, it's about 20% of people who know Andrew Yang and his policies. Okay, so if you do the math again, so this is method number 2. Okay, so what we would talk about yesterday was method number 1, right? So method number 2 is we have 20% of people who know Andrew Yang, and we know that currently he's polling 4 to 6%, right? Let's just say 4%. So 4% over 20%, that is equal to 1 over 5, which is 20%. You see the math here? So I think this is actually pretty reasonable estimate, because most people still don't know Andrew Yang and his policies, or they just think of him as a one policy guy, right? Freedom dividend, $1,000 a month, a gimmick plan. But once they dig into the facts that Andrew Yang presented and his policies, the conversion rate is really, really high. Now, depending on the actual numbers you take, the results could be different. So if you take 6% poll and say, maybe 30% of people already know Andrew Yang and his policies, the details, then that also gives you 20%. Now, if you use 20% here, and that would be higher. So that would be more like 6 over 20. So that would be 30%, right? That would be 30% actual polling. So that just gives you some ideas, right? We have multiple methods which showed consistent estimate of 20% polling for Andrew Yang, and that would immediately put Andrew Yang in the top 3, if not top 2 category, and that would make him the wild card person who could win the whole thing, as Choctaw said. Okay, that's good. Now, if we recall, in 2016 election, the polling results were completely wrong, right? Most of them. Even on the night of election, most of the polls were saying Hillary would beat Trump like a drum. Basically, for sure, right? There were even polls saying Hillary has 90 or 99% of chance of winning. But again, who is our president now? So out of the polls, so many polls with wrong predictions, out of all the polls, actually there's one I found online poll that actually predicted that Trump can win, and this is from the TYLT, the Tylt.com politics. So they have this. I'll put a link down below. Okay, they had this online polling asking, can Trump actually win? And look at the result. 53.8% saying Trump can win, and 46.2% were saying Trump cannot win. So this is actually the closest one, right, to the reality. And all those other polls were imperfect. And so this one is actually just in July. Let's take a quick look. And you can see that the real-time voting, so Trump goes up and down with Hillary. And so this is real time at that time, I think, and this is the final result. And the final result is actually pretty close to reality. Of course, it's already closed. And yeah, so it actually shows online polling is more realistic, more trustworthy than a lot of traditional polling, right? At that time people were still arguing, there's no way Trump can win. Ohio, Pennsylvania, the math is impossible. Period. Okay, so since this Tylt, I don't know how to spell it, Tylt, T-Y-L-T, Tylt poll is so predictive, right, successful at that time, let's take a look at the same online polling. What does it say if Andrew Yang can win the presidential election? So this is from TheTylt.com. Can Andrew Yang win the Democratic presidential nomination? Okay, this is nomination. Okay. Yes, 95.5%. Right? That is the math. That is the polling, the online polling, which successfully predicted Donald Trump's election in 2016. That's amazing. And this is real-time voting. You can see that Andrew Yang can win, goes up and plateaus nearly at nearly 95.5%. Wow. And let's listen to what Andrew Yang thinks his possibility is. Okay. This is from NPR. Okay. You hear it? Oh, something's wrong.
About 2%. Oh, I 100% can win.
Can you hear it? Sorry. Let me play it again. How did I play it again? Yeah, let's do it.
Now we're going to spend a few minutes with Democratic presidential hopeful Andrew Yang. He says he is confident about his chances of becoming the party's nominee, even though nationally he's polling at about 2%.
Oh, I 100% can win. I'm running to solve the biggest problems of our time.
I mean, you clearly have great ideas. Love the ideas.
Oh, thank you.
That's TheTylt Johnny, a New Yorker who runs a nonprofit mentorship program to prepare girls for the workforce. She's one of two undecided voters who sat down with Yang and Morning Edition host Noel King as part of our series Off Script. They met yesterday at a New York City restaurant called Bodega, as in bao, the steamed bun. Yang likes the spot for its dim sum, and Johnny generally likes Yang's proposal for a universal basic income, a guaranteed $12,000 a year for every adult. Yang calls it the freedom dividend. But Johnny, who often works with families in poverty, pressed Yang about how he'll get enough conservative support to make this policy idea a reality.
How about reaching across the aisle? How are you going to do that?
Well, so I'm one of only two Democratic candidates in the field that 10% or more of Donald Trump voters say they would support in the general election, which makes me the best candidate to take on and beat Donald Trump in 2020. And I'm saying, look, the reality is we did blast away 4 million manufacturing jobs in these communities, many of which were in swing states, or used to be swing, that went red. And so they see that I'm trying to solve that set of problems. And so I'm already peeling off disaffected Trump voters, independents, libertarians, some conservatives. I also talk in terms of numbers and business, and a lot of conservatives are attracted to that.
All right, Hethel, I know you had a question about Mr. Yang's identity and what it's meant on the trail.
So cool.
So you'd be the first Asian American president. What does that mean, first of all? And then also Asian American is such a big label.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, not every Asian has the same opportunities. Vietnamese are different, Pakistanis from Indians, etc. But within your identity, what are you going to do to promote Asian American?
I'm certainly very proud to be the first Asian American man to run for president as a Democrat. And when I see Asian Americans around the country, many seem excited about my candidacy. At the same time, like you said, we're a very, very diverse community with very, very different sets of experiences. And so I would never suggest that, you know, I can somehow speak for all Asian Americans or that my experience is representative. But I do remember what it was like growing up in this country, where I'd just be so pumped to see an Asian of any kind on the TV, where I'd jump up and down and, like, you know, try and get my, I mean, things have changed since then. But it's given me a lot of joy and pride to think about an Asian child turning on the Democratic debate and seeing me up on that stage, and hopefully it gives them a sense that we're just as American as anyone else.
That's Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. It's a portion of his conversation with undecided voters and NPR's Noel King. You will hear more of their off-script conversation later this week across NPR, and you can watch our previous conversations with candidates and voters at npr.org/offscript.
Okay. So you've seen Andrew Yang's answer to what is your chance of winning, right? He said, oh, I 100% can win. And this is so close to the polling, online polling, we just showed 95.5%. And Andrew Yang actually recently said that the chances of him winning the nomination now is actually much, much higher than the chances of him going from a political nobody to current status, right? 4 to 6%. And he's already beating a bunch of sitting senators, governors, and, you know, congressmen, right? While people are dropping out, you know, the so-called top-tier candidate, Kamala Harris, dropped out. Beto O'Rourke dropped out. And Andrew Yang still, I mean, his campaigns just keep growing and growing, right? That is the math. So he said that, you know, his campaign has exceeded expectation at every stage, and it would just grow and grow and peak at the right time and win the whole thing. And once he wins the nomination, he has, you know, 100% chance of beating Donald Trump, because he's one of the only two candidates where more than 10% of Trump voters would support in the general election. And I think this actually 10%, it might be an underestimate. Okay, and another fact to support this confidence of Andrew Yang winning is that he actually won respect from across the party line. So in the last video, we showed that Andrew Yang actually won respect from, you know, Chuck Todd or even from Tucker Carlson, who works for Fox News, which is pro-Republican and pro-Trump, right? So let's actually watch another Tucker interview of Andrew Yang, where he showed ultimate respect for Andrew Yang.
$1 billion in profit. That's 1/3 of the GDP of the entire state of Vermont. It's a ton of money. But remarkably, Amazon did not pay a single dime of federal income tax. And they're not alone. Dozens of profitable corporations paid nothing in federal income taxes this year. Delta Airlines, Chevron, GM, more. Some of them are even getting tax rebates they can apply later. It's a weird system we have. Our tax code is broken, but almost no one's saying anything about it. Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang is. He has a plan that he says would change it. We talked to him about his plan a little while ago. So you make the case that these companies, take Amazon, but it could be Chevron, it could be GM, are profitable because of the investment the United States as taxpayers, in part, have given to them, and they're giving nothing in return. How do we fix this?
Yeah, and Amazon's the most egregious example, where they're now soaking up $20 billion in business and causing 30% of American malls and stores to close, and taxpayers are seeing zero in return. So if you look at what other advanced economies have done, they've figured this out. They've said, look, we need to have a mechanism in place so that Amazon's going to pay its fair share along with Netflix and Delta and these other companies that are paying zero in taxes. So what they've done is they've adopted a value-added tax, where then the American people would get a tiny slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, and on and on. And it's very, very hard for companies like Amazon to game their way out of a value-added tax system.
So why don't we have that?
It's a great question. I mean, people have been advocating for it for quite some time, and my campaign is advocating and championing it right now because we need to wise up to the fact that companies like Amazon are very smart and moving their earnings through places like Ireland, where the American taxpayer will see none of it, whereas a value-added tax will make it impossible for them to sell to us without paying into our society their fair share.
So here, Tucker was like, oh, you have such a brilliant idea, right? And it's already working in Europe, in other countries. So why don't we have it? So he's like, oh my goodness, that's so brilliant. So why don't we do it? And Andrew Yang just, told him the fact.
You mentioned the other costs that are often not recorded that stem from Amazon's business model, the bankruptcy of countless American businesses. But there's also the fact that they basically subsidize their labor costs using our social services. What's the cost of that, do you think?
Oh, it's in the billions or tens of billions. And there was one instance where McDonald's actually was sending its people instructions as to how to file for various social services. So you're right that our social programs have been subsidizing the low-wage patterns of many of these employers.
So why are you the only candidate who's thinking through what to do about this? I think it's kind of weird.
I think it's weird. Again, all you have to do is look around the world and say other countries, other advanced economies have figured this out. We're the only advanced economy that does not have a value-added tax in place. And we need to make sure that the American people are actually seeing some of the gains from the incredible innovation and value that companies like Amazon and Salesforce and Netflix, all of whom paid zero in taxes last year, are getting away with, really. And they're doing their job, which is to pay as little in taxes as possible.
Right.
We have to do our job, which is to make it so the American people see our fair share.
So does that...
Yeah, I like the way that Tucker looked at Andrew Yang. So he was like an undergrad looking at this, world famous professor, addressing this important question. And Tucker, so he was like, I mean, why don't we have this? I mean, our other countries are already doing it, right? I mean, that's so great. And why are you the only candidate talking about this, right? Are our political leaders dumb, or are they, just somehow, I don't know. I mean, he was like this is out of my, imagination, out of my understanding. Like, other countries are already doing it, and it worked so well. And why couldn't any other candidates be talking about this? Why are you the only candidate who brought this issue to center stage?
Just to argue the other side for a second, would that increase, presumably it would increase the cost to American consumers of goods, right?
Well, in some instances, in some cases, the companies will find cost efficiencies or eat part of it. And that's one reason why my campaign wants to take that money that we're getting from the value-added tax and return it to the American people in the form of a dividend, because that's the most direct way that we can actually have the American people benefit. The fear is that even if we do end up increasing the tax rate on some of these companies, that the American people won't benefit from that.
Because that money will be swallowed by our political machine somehow?
Yeah, it'll go into the giant pipes of D.C., never to be seen or heard from again. And so the goal is to make sure that doesn't happen by putting those economic resources directly into the hands of the American people.
But wouldn't that be bad for those of us who live in the District of Columbia and own property here? Wouldn't it be better for us if we could hoard all the money?
I have a feeling you all would be fine. As you know, Tucker, Washington, D.C., I believe, has the highest per capita income in the country at this point. So, I have a feeling that the boutique restaurants will still have plenty of business.
Okay. It's because we're making innovative products the world wants to buy. No, sorry. It's because we're taking your money by force and hoarding it. Andrew Yang, certainly the most interesting person running for president. And sounds like a great idea to me. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tucker. See you soon.
Oh.
Well, last year, Amazon.
That's I think the third question that Tucker asked was actually brilliant. So he asked that, would this cause inflation, right? Would this cause some of the costs be transferred to consumers? And he did his homework, and Andrew Yang addressed that very well. And actually, this is, I think, an excellent point. Is that the value-added tax, if you apply it alone, is going to increase the prices of some products, inevitably. Because, business is business, right? The prices will not increase dramatically because there are still competitions, right? But, the costs will be transferred to some extent to consumers. And the only way to counteract this is to implement the freedom dividend that Andrew Yang is advocating. And that was also championed previously by Martin Luther King and other, Thomas Paine, other famous people, and endorsed by 1,000 economists. And that is the only viable solution, right? A combination of value-added tax and freedom dividend. They go, together. If you only have one, it doesn't work. And because now, actually, the average American people or the consumers would benefit from the technological economic advances of these high-tech companies. So it's a win-win, right? So the companies, they are still making profits, and they just pay their fair share. And then average American people would benefit from $1,000 a month freedom dividend that would improve, the health, mental health, the children's health, nutrition, and the reduce crime rates, reduce stress levels, encourage creativity, entrepreneurships, and a lot of good things. Philanthropy, charity activities, stuff like that. And yeah, so that's why they have to go, side by side. They have to go together, these two, value-added tax and freedom dividend, and that would create a trickle up economy, because everyone now becomes winner. And the 78% of people living paycheck to paycheck, once they get the $1,000 a month, most of them will immediately spend the money, right, to do good to improve their situations, and that would be a humanity first economy, and then that kind of spending will be pro economy will also, I mean, some of the money will go back to Amazon, Google, Facebook. So it's going to be a win-win. And so last but not least, let's take a look at some of the comments. Oh, actually, this is second last. It's very quick. Yeah, I like to look at comments on YouTube session. This is on the Tucker interview of Yang saying Amazon needs to pay their fair share. Because these comments are from, you know, very brilliant viewers, right? A lot of them are, you know, I mean, it's anonymous, so everyone are free to comment, and most likely people will say what is true to their hearts, like their true opinions. There's no, you know, there's no need to hide anything. No need to, you know, tell lies on the internet. And yeah, so let's take a quick look at some of the comments. Of course, the best comment is by this guy called Think Harder Politics, who says that $1,000 a month freedom dividend is not Democrat, is not Republican, it is the United States reunited for the people, right? So it's really bipartisan policy, and that would benefit everyone, and there's no stigma attached to it, and there's no need to, you know, to regulate it, so to speak. I mean, it's less regulation, and there's no need to, you know, fake your income, you know, to qualify for certain benefits programs. That's, you know, the shortage of, that's the kind of the the pitfalls of some of the current policies, the welfare programs. And yeah, you know this guy. And wow, Tucker is giving more fair coverage to Yang than liberal mainstream media. That's true. And this guy said, I hope he becomes our president. So nice to listen to someone who sounds like a real human being. And that was literally the first time I saw Tucker Carlson smile while on air with a Democrat. I want to say that too, because a lot of time, or most of the time, Tucker was just, had a straight face, right? Staring at you. But he actually smiled when a couple times, several times when interviewing Andrew Yang. And okay, so this guy says similar things. I actually, yeah, the previous comment was adapted from this one. $1,000 a month is not democratic. It's not Democrat. It's not Republican. It's forward. It's not left. It's not right. It's forward. It's bipartisan. Okay, and something tells me that corporations aren't going to be voting for Andrew, but actually a lot of employees from the tech companies, they know the advancement of AIs. A lot of them actually supported Andrew Yang, and the fact is that Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook CEO, right, and Elon Musk, right, they all support, and CEO of Reddit, they all support universal-based income. And that tells us something very important, because these are the guys who know where the technology is going. They know the technologies of the future, and they support universal basic income and Andrew Yang. Okay, so last but not least, let's listen to another quick Tucker show about Andrew Yang. So in this case, he was talking about, you know, Democrats were so dumb about impeachment, but there's only one guy who's, you know, kind of smart among the Democratic candidates, Andrew Yang.
In a moment like this, weirdly, it's the non-politicians who seem to see things the most clearly. Here's Andrew Yang after last week's presidential debate.
But when I talk to voters around the country, Wolf, I have to say I get very, very few questions about impeachment. I know that there are people who are very intent on the impeachment proceedings day to day, but that doesn't line up with what I'm hearing from voters here on the ground.
So would Democrats, you believe, be better off simply wrapping up this impeachment process sooner rather than later?
I do think that the more time that goes on, the less time the Democrats have to present a positive vision for the country that will get people excited and help us win in 2020.
Out in Santa Monica, the Pilates moms are looking at that and saying, Andrew Yang, did he just criticize impeachment? Is he a right-winger? Is he a racist? Is he telling us that voters want politicians to care more about their lives than they want politicians to extract symbolic televised revenge on their political enemies? If you watch MSNBC, it's hard to believe that could be true. But that's what the Yang guy is claiming. In the wake of those poll numbers we just read, other Democrats appear to be considering the same thing. Even Adam Schiff may be coming around. Watch this.
Okay. Yeah, so Tucker is so impressed by Andrew Yang. So previously he said Andrew Yang is definitely the most interesting guy running for president. And now he's saying Andrew Yang is the only wise one among the candidates who pointed out that, you know, impeachment is going to be loser. It's going to be loser for the Democratic Party, and actually we should. I mean, he's pro-impeachment, but we should actually not spend as much time doing this useless thing, because it's not going to pass the Senate. Okay, so that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and please like and subscribe and comment below.